welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. Choo choo, I'm your conductor, Sean McKinda.
Choo choo, and I'm your ticket officer, Jackson Keller. I don't know what else.
You're my tail section. Get back there. Get the fuck back in the tail section.
True. We're talking about Snowpiercer today.
Yeah, this train metaphor isn't just a weird thing that we're doing. It's thematically relevant. We're talking about Snowpiercer, a movie that I watched fairly quickly after it came out, not really aware of who Bong-Joon Ho was at all at the time, but also not aware of what I was getting into. It dropped on Netflix and might be one of the few good movies to premiere on Netflix.
Did it premiere on Netflix? For some reason, I remember it getting a theatrical release back in the day.
It had a very tight theatrical release. It was kind of like Uncut Gems of last year. Like, it had a very tight theatrical release, but then did release on Netflix wider very shortly afterwards.
I see.
So it's not a Netflix original, but it's still worth mentioning that it is better than almost anything else on Netflix.
What, you're telling me that Bright can't compare to Snowpiercer? Come on now.
Shit, you know what? Fairy lives don't matter today.
Fairy lives don't matter today.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, talking about Snowpiercer, Jackson.
Snowpiercer. So, yeah, I remember when this movie came out. I remember that there was definitely buzz, like a lot of people in my circles, like, you know, not the least of which was you, of course, because I remember you talking about it.
I watched it with my roommate, with our other roommate. We keep mentioning our other roommate these past few episodes, so shout out to him. But I watched it with him. Like I was like, I have 2 hours before my next class, and I put it on. It was a 2 hour and 6 minute movie, and I was almost late for my next class because I refused to turn it off until it was over. I was fucking hooked by it.
Hell yeah, and I could totally see why. So I was interested in the movie, but I was a little wary, for reasons related to Chappie.
It always comes back to Chappie.
It always comes back to Chappie. So, to be clear, Chappie was not out by the time Snowpiercer came out. But what I believe was out, or at least I would have seen by the time like I had really heard about it and been like interested in watching Snowpiercer, was Neil Blomkamp's previous film, Elysium, which was similarly like a sci-fi movie, you know, with a central class metaphor. And I did see Elysium. And it was really stupid. It was really terrible.
In theaters.
Yeah. I saw that movie with the. Did I see that with you or did I see that with Keg? I think I saw it.
We were both there.
Oh, were we both there?
Yeah, it was all three of us.
It was all three of us. Okay. So yeah, Elysium is terrible. And for those reasons, even though, like, you know, it's not like Elysium being bad was like a shock that much. Like, it was kind of shocking because District 9 was good. I mean, I don't know if it holds up, but like at the time I thought it was good at least. But like that was not an unpopular opinion, right? So nobody had told me that like Snowpiercer was like Elysium. But you know, in my gut, I was like, ooh, like really obvious, like sci-fi metaphor, like hot off of after watching Elysium. Like, I don't know about this one, Chief. And really what reignited my interest in watching Snowpiercer was, you know, when I was informed that this was indeed Bong-Joon Ho, director of Best Picture Oscar darling Parasite, directing Snowpiercer. And I mean, that's the fundamental difference, isn't it? Snowpiercer is a sci-fi movie with a like really broad class allegory by the director of Parasite. And Elysium is a sci-fi action movie with a really broad class allegory by the director of Chappie. So, that is to say that I'm glad we finally watched it because Snowpiercer is good. Snowpiercer is great, actually. However,
We'll get to the however in a second. If you're unfamiliar with what Snowpiercer is, yes, it is a broad class allegory, but if you don't go in for that type of shit and just want to watch a great fucking movie, Snowpiercer is also that. It is a train running through the frozen world. It loops the entirety of the world once a year after we froze the world over, trying to combat climate change, and featuring the last remnants of humanity as they struggle to survive and fight against ruling classes. Oops, the class structure's there anyway. Wah wah. That's the basic premise of Snowpiercer. Outside of that, it's just a great fucking action movie, even if you're not in on the whole class commentary, but you should be, because it's Bong-Joon Ho, and Bong-Joon Ho knows how to do class commentary.
Bong-Joon Ho is a very smart man, and Bong-Joon Ho is a god tier fucking director. Holy shit. I've only seen this movie and Parasite. But the way that this dude directs action, the way that he constructs a setting, the way he handles class commentary with a lot of depth and nuance and like understanding of like the issues and theory and shit. Dude's a fucking genius. Like, no question.
Yeah, he knows how to make you care about movies, which is why I absolutely fucking love this movie. As I said, I watched this way back when. Fucking great movie. I had a problem with it when I first watched it that we're going to touch on. And by touch on, I mean probably spend a good chunk of the podcast discussion, because it's what Jackson has a problem with. And if there's nothing else that we do on this podcast, it's argue occasionally about endings of movies, because we're passionate about things like that. But watching it, this is my third time watching it. I watched it like half a year ago at this point. I don't really know. Quarantine time is fucky wucky. But yeah, no, when I watched it not too long ago, I absolutely fucking loved it. So I was very excited to get back and watch it again. It holds up the third time, and I think I've honestly liked it more every single fucking time I've watched it, and have picked up on a little bit more metaphor and understanding. And like, there's things that, confused me the first two times. I'm like, what does this stand in for? How does this work out? That like, I'm starting to get a better feel for as I've been watching it. It's a great movie. Highly recommended. For the most part. I've also spoken to a lot of people who really, really absolutely hate it. It kind of has a very dark edge to it. And by that I mean it's a very dark movie. It doesn't have an edge. It is just a dark movie. So if you don't go in on that, stay away from it. I have one friend who has described it as like just an absolutely nihilistic garbage fire of a movie, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that conclusion, but that's neither here nor there. I have another friend who described I'm gonna wait to the spoilers to explain how they described it, because it is the greatest description but also is kind of spoilery. We'll get to it.
Fair enough. I was gonna say I'm leaning forward in anticipation, but I mean we still have plenty to talk about in the non-spoiler section, because I imagine a good chunk of spoiler section will be ending discourse. But yeah, no, I mean I totally agree. For the most part, like, even though this is my first time seeing it, like, even just like the setting itself and the way it's constructed, like I could see, as far as like people who don't like this movie, I could see that being another bugbear for people, that like not being able to get over like the logic of the train, right? And the train is meant to be much more like allegorical and much more not just allegorical, like that often can be an excuse for like a poorly thought out setting. But I don't think the setting's poorly thought out. Like, I just think that like you just have to accept the premise of like
as an allegory, it's incredibly well thought out, and it fits together like a perfectly well-oiled machine. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink for those in the know. But if you kind of like take a step back and be like, well, hang on a second. That's basically perpetual motion, isn't it? That shouldn't work. And yeah, I mean, you're right, but go sit in a corner. I don't want to talk to you.
No, I mean, that's the thing, is that like I could accept that there are people who can't get over that hump. I think if you like do just buy into the core premise that there is a train that can just blast through the snow and like keep humanity alive for 18 years. Like I think that the setting, even in terms of the like mechanics of the world and the characters, is pretty well thought out. Like that's part of the fun. Like that's the other thing too I think that's interesting, because I agree that the movie is really dark, but the great thing about Bong Joon Ho is that he's funny, or at least knows how to direct a funny movie. Like
especially he's very funny in a way that you're kind of like, wait, what was that funny?
Yeah,
I don't know. And then like you kind of think about it, and then you kind of like, no, that was funny in a very dark, grisly way. Like, oh my god, there is one scene where they're fighting, and like the fighting stops, and two of the characters just stop and look at each other, and they're enemies, and the one just smiles this big bloody toothy grin, and it is so upsetting, but it is still like you can't help but laugh at it. It's a funny fucking scene, but it is uncomfortable.
There's a lot of moments like that, and like as a director in both this and Parasite, he's so good at towing that line of like dark comedy while still keeping you invested and like jolting you out with like a comedic bit at the right time or a weird thing. Like his movies go through a lot of different tones, even though I'd say like mostly they're pretty tonally consistent. Like with Parasite, it's more like halves. This I feel like is more consistently dark with some bits of, you know, like levity here and there. But I also think even just as far as like joy, like there is some joy to be had in just like, you know, as an action movie, just like going through and seeing like what's in the next train car. Like it is.
The spectacle is so fucking good, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it is like a video game, but it's like a video game in a good way. Like that's a common criticism of shitty movies, but like this is like the joy of like what's beyond the next door, you know?
It really is. And like there's one scene, and I don't want to get too deep into it. I even mentioned something that I cut from this where I realized was actually an inadvertent spoiler. But there is one scene where they're going around a bend, and that's all I'll say about it. That is so fucking just action movie schlock in the absolute best way possible. Because if you take a step back, it is absolute just garbage doo-doo schlock. But in the context of everything else, it feels like tense, great filmmaking. It is the type of thing that would get a CinemaSin ding because of just the sheer improbability of it all. But fuck it, it's great because Bong Joon Ho is doing it, and it's a great film.
Is Bong Joon Ho just Hideo Kojima if Hideo Kojima like had a therapist?
I don't want to talk to you anymore. You were asking why I don't look at you like Akira Kurosawa. That's why. That is why, Jackson. That is why.
Listen, I'll defend this point. Fans of the Metal Gear games.
I see what you're saying. The problem is that I see what you are saying, but you didn't have to say it. You have broken me to the point where, yes, I see the political allegory, and I see the way that it kind of plays with meta commentary and the cleverness of the action sequences interspersed throughout it. But I also don't need to be compared to Johnny who shits his pants in every game, Metal Gear Solid Hideo Kojima.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
Oh my god, I am so out of breath. That was a lot more strenuous than I intended it to be. Oh.
Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Train.
Fuck off. Oh, all right. That was actually a good joke. I'll give it to you. That was a good joke.
I've redeemed myself, boys. We're doing it.
But yeah, Snowpiercer good. Snowpiercer good movie. Watch Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer good. And to be clear, for all the ending discourse that we're about to get into, you know, give or take a couple minutes, any discourse I have about the ending does not in any way hamper my recommendation. This is a great movie that even just for like the visuals and the action and the concept alone, you know, let alone the fact that it's mostly a very smart allegory made by a very smart guy, like easy recommendation. I do tend to get hung up on endings. In fact, I've been thinking about how I feel about the ending literally all day, and it's down to like literally 30 seconds. Otherwise, I would call the movie basically perfect.
Yeah, this is a conversation that we're going to have literally driven by the last 30 seconds of the film. And that is not an exaggeration. It is literally based around the last 30 seconds of the film and how we feel about that. Outside of that, we are on basically the exact same page of this is a great fucking movie.
Yeah, like to put it in context, like if you sat down and like made a cut of the movie, like you wouldn't even have to add anything. If you cut certain things, I might feel completely differently about the ending. But that's, you know, that's ending talk. So
do you have anything else you really want to say pre-spoiler at this point then? I mean, we've you know, sang its praises, talked a little bit about the action of it. Chris Evans is there. We haven't mentioned that. There's actually a lot of really big name actors in this. But
yeah.
Chris Evans is there, which is pretty cool. Kang Ho Sung is there, the dad from Parasite, which is, it's great to see him and very weird to see him this disheveled in comparison to Parasite. It is kind of funny. It takes you a minute to really recognize that that's who it is. Tilda Swinton's there. I love Tilda Swinton when I remember her name, and the only reason I remembered her name this time is because I have the IMDb page up on the other side. Even yesterday, I'm like, Tippi Hedren, no. Tippi Hedren, no. Tippi Hedren, no.
You want to call
Swinton,
everyone
yes.
Tippi Hedren, I feel like, even if their names aren't even close. At least I can see how you get there with Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. I just have a thing for the name Tippi Hedren, and it's only Tilda Swinton and the woman from Hereditary, the mom from Hereditary.
Oh, fuck, now I'm forgetting her name. God damn it.
Those are the only two that I want to call Tippi Hedren, and I don't know why, and I don't know why I can't shake it, but it drives me up a goddamned wall. Toni Collette. It's because they both start with T's. I have T name blindness, I think is what it boils down to. If your name starts with a T, congratulations. You're now Tippi Hedren or Tony. That's all I got for you. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, the acting's really good. Like it's actually, I forget that like Chris Evans is actually a pretty good actor. Not that like he does a bad job as Cap. Like he's really good as Cap, on the contrary. But it's hard to like, he's the kind of guy, kind of like we were talking about the other day, maybe it was last week, I can't remember, with like a performance of Uncut Gems, how you can't see, sometimes like you can't see the actor as an actor because like you only see them as a character or as a, like themselves, right, as a movie star. But Chris Evans is really good in this. And like I was not thinking about the fact that he was Captain America the entire time. I was thinking about it sometimes, but
sometimes it's hard not to, especially when it gets into kind of the action sequences of it.
Yeah,
it is interesting though, too, because this came out, I think, only after like 1 or 2 Captain America appearances at that point. No, yeah, it would have been.
It would have been about contemporary with Winter Soldier, so 2 or 3, give or take.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been much. I was gonna say Avengers came out in what, 2012, the first one.
Yep.
So yeah, this would have only been like a second or third one, and like I was like, oh, I'm really excited to see Chris Evans is a little bit more of like a weird independent actor, and then Marvel just paid him all the money, and he didn't need to anymore. But
he's done now, so
yeah, I'm hoping to see him in other films. I really like Chris Evans both as a person and as an actor. So fingers crossed we start seeing him in other things like Snowpiercer, because I would kill for another gritty, dark, nasty Chris Evans. It was great. It was wonderful.
Yeah, he's got genuine chops. It'd be real great to like, you know, it's not like Uncut Gems here, but I could see one day like Chris Evans maybe putting in like an Uncut Gems tier performance, like once he's fully free from his Marvel shackles, mentally and physically.
All right, well let's dive into spoilers here. Let's get into the big discussion at the end. Before we do though, as always, if you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes, tell a friend, pass us around, whatever you gotta do. It's the only way we grow. Follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/BADHcast. Next week, we're gonna do something we've never done before. And by that, I mean, we're going to do something we've done before. We're going to revisit Undertale.
Also, technically, this will be the second time we revisit because we did Last Jedi too.
Well, oh, fuck, it is, isn't it? Kind of.
We did Force Awakens with that one too. It was a double feature.
I'm unhappy with myself. I thought I was saying something clever there for a minute. And look at me out here just saying. You know what? Hey, at least I didn't say the words Hideo Kojima. And so you know what? I can still walk away from this episode a winner, all right? That's all it boils down to.
Speaking of Hideo Kojima, oh boy, games and metafiction, next week I'm going to be in top form.
That is, oh God, oh no. I wanted to redo Undertale, just a little bit of explanation as to why we're redoing it. I wanted to redo it because I feel like I did not give it a fair shake the first time we went through it, and I felt bad about that. And it even hearing when we released it, like, hey, this felt like an unfair criticism of it. And I'm like, you know what, that's fair. We'll come back to it at some point, and it feels like now is the time to come back to Undertale. So we're doing that. Jackson won't shut up next week, guaranteed. But then again, he probably won't shut up this week as we get into spoilers right now. Before we dive into the ending and everything else, I do just want to tell a story because
yes.
Oh, I've got two stories actually. I'm sorry, I already forgot about my friend. My friend who described this movie as Willy Wonka and the Murderous Train, which is very, very good. It's very, very accurate.
Very, very good. Very true.
So first and foremost, shout outs there. You're entirely correct. But if you're watching this movie, you're gonna notice the Weinstein Company right up front, and that's going to be uncomfortable because Harvey Weinstein is an absolute piece of shit, garbage trash monster of a ex-human being. I refuse to even acknowledge his humanity at this point. So the good thing about that, though, is that Bong-Joon Ho also fucking hates Harvey Weinstein and is on record in many interviews just being like, yeah, no, fuck that dude. And my favorite part is that Bong-Joon Ho was very much fighting for the director, the final cut of the movie, the director's cut. And Harvey Weinstein wanted to chop out a bunch of conversation and talking and stuff in favor of action, and Bong Joon-ho's like, what the fuck are you on? No, excuse you. And the one thing that the one that's on record is that Harvey Weinstein wanted to cut out the fish gutting scene ahead of the train fight over the bridge of the yearly bridge, and Bong Joon-ho basically was not budging on it, and eventually the description is he was tired, he had a migraine, and he lied. He went, "You don't understand. This scene means a lot to me. My dad was a fisherman, and I really want to keep it in. And this is an homage to him, a reference to him." And Harvey relented. And in interviews, he's like, "My dad wasn't a fucking fisherman. I completely fucking lied." And normally I pepper in those fucks.
Bong Joon-ho. Fuck yeah.
The dude just swears like a sailor, and I can only respect him for it because fuck yes, please and thank you. So yeah, I adore that story for a lot of reasons.
That's some powerful stuff. That's that story ages like a fine wine.
It really, really does. All right. So now that the fun haha spoiler stuff is out of the way, how do we want to do this? What's our play here?
I mean, so since this is basically going to be our little like Phoenix Wright court case and I'm the one kind of going on the offensive. I guess I'll leave it up to you. Like, do you want me to explain what my qualms of the ending is first, or do you want to explain why it's good first?
So let's start by explaining the ending and see where it goes from there. How about that?
Sure. And you know, here's what we'll do. Let's explain the ending. How about you explain the ending, and then I will, like, because I even said that you could like cut a couple of shots out of this ending and I would be completely fine with it. In fact, even thrilled with it. And I will explain what those are and then maybe why.
All right. Yeah. Let's go with that. So the ending of the film is as follows. Chris Evans makes it to the front of the train with Namgung, who is Hang Ho Song, and his daughter, Yona, played by El Sung Ko. And when they get to the front of the train, the door opens and the conductor, Wilford, lets Chris Evans in. A whole conversation happens, and at the end of it, it's revealed that children are being taken from the tail section to be used as literal cogs in machines to keep the engine moving as parts go, quote-unquote, extinct or aren't being able to be made anymore. This culminates in Chris Evans understanding Namgung's opinion of let's get the fuck off this train, blow the door, destroy the whole thing, fuck it, let's just get out of here. And they protect Yona as well as another boy that was rescued from the machine itself. And basically it destroys the whole train, leaving just the two of them, the Yona and the boy, to step out into the cold, frozen world that we have absolutely destroyed. I'm going to pitch to Jackson here, but not before I say I find this ending to be very hopeful, and Jackson disagrees. So tell us how you would make this movie work for you.
So my core problem is essentially this. I use this phrase a lot in the pre-discussion, so I'll just, start with here. I think that with a movie this cynical, I think that, or at least a movie this dark, like, the ending is important. So, like, maybe it's not fair for me to call it cynical, but up until now, the movies felt pretty cynical. So I think that with where the movie was going, I think that you need to bite the bullet on the extinction of humanity. And basically, because there is a shot that I kind of like, the shot of, like, Yona and the boy seeing the polar bear in the distance, but I don't want Yona or the boy there at all. I think that this movie is concerned about a lot of things. Another nice thing about Bong-Joon Ho is that, like, the movie is a big class commentary, no denying that, but it's also got environmentalism on the brain. So the train is like a multifaceted allegory. I started to really think more about the environmentalism stuff at the scene. I think this is a really nice touch that they track time by, like, where the train is on its journey and, like, the New Year celebration. Because, again, it's not subtle, but it's, it's effective of, like, it's like Earth. Earth has a trajectory around the sun.
Just as a quick, if I can interject here, just to try and keep some moments of levity interspersed throughout this argument we're about to have. I just have to say, speaking of just heavy-handed nonsense, Chris Evans' speech about how he knows that babies taste best is some of the, like, most over-the-top horse shit writing, but I love it so goddamn much.
It works. Somehow it works. I don't know how, but, like, Bong-Joon Ho can do it, the madman.
It really, like, that whole speech that Chris Evans gives should not work on almost any level. It is too on the nose. It is too hacky. It is too goofy, but it fucking works.
I mean, Bong-Joon Ho, you could say a lot of things about him as a director, but you can't say he doesn't commit to the bit. So maybe that's it. But regardless, so, like, there's this idea that, the train is the systems of capitalism. The train is, like, Earth itself, or maybe the train isn't Earth. Like, maybe the train is just humanity and all its petty squabbles. And I think from that angle, I really like this idea of, like, if the train crashes, it seems like it's the end of the world, but only to the people on it. In reality, like, no matter how fucked up, like, the tenure of the humans was on Earth, there's still just one, like, blip of an eye on a cosmic scale. There's like still polar bears and shit doing their thing. Like life finds a way, Jeff Goldblum. And like, so from an environmental perspective, I like that a lot more. This idea that we kind of get a clean break. And in that sense, like there's like a weird, I don't know, hopefulness is the right word, but there's a weird zen to that ending of like there's the extinction of humanity, but like, life continues. But my problem with the ending as it is with Yona and the kids still being alive is that like this is, and again, it's almost all like visual, like, it's presented as being like this hope shot, but and while in terms of the metaphor, and this is maybe where like I diverge, even though I was sticking up for the movie and dealing mostly with metaphorical and like not caring as much about the literal stuff, I do think that part of allegory is that like the events in the story have to ring a little true. And for me, this idea that, Yona and the kid are going to go off and like, be free, like, to explore the world and unbound by the train. I mean, free to do what? Free to freeze to death? Free to get eaten by a polar bear? Like, fuck. And like, that's sort of my problem with it. And like, I think that this also extends to broader political things. I do think it's relevant to the themes. Like, I wouldn't be as hung up on the ending as I am if I thought it was just a matter of like I thought it was corny or whatever. It's that I do think it has implications on the effectiveness of the movie as a political allegory when I feel like it can't follow through on the ending. It makes this really great case, this really nuanced case for like the problems of capitalism and trying to reform the system from the inside and like the ugliness of revolution and like all this really heavy shit. But then to end on kind of a hopeful note that to me like doesn't feel very hopeful at all is a big problem for me, and it's something that makes me I bristle with it. So
to Jackson's credit, I can entirely see where the issues with his interpretation lies. I don't think that he is necessarily reading it wrong, but I feel like he is reading it differently from how I interpreted it, and potentially, given that Bong-Joon Ho has gone on record as saying that this is intended to be a more hopeful ending, I would argue potentially different from the way Bong-Joon Ho intended it as well. Obviously, I am speaking entirely out of turn by saying such, but you know what? I like to pretend to appeal to authority sometimes, We can all fake it till we make it. Why
Hell
not? Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I do find this ending to be incredibly hopeful, and to Jackson's credit as well, I actually had a lot of problems with it the first time I watched it as well, and that when the movie ended, I was very much on Team Jackson's side of fuck everyone, we all deserve death, just kill us all. So I was very much on that, and I'm like, this hopeful ending kind of sucks, and that was actually something that stuck with me through Parasite as well, and I think that this is potentially a reason why Bong-Joon Ho's movies deserve to be rewatched, because I feel like you had a similar kind of hang-ups with the ending of Parasite.
Wait, did I?
I feel like you did, because Parasite, I'm going to cut these spoilers out here.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, yeah, you're right.
So spoilers cut out for Parasite, just so Jackson and I are now on the same page. I think that Bong Joon Ho's movies, like when the first time I saw Parasite, I also very much bristled at the ending and was kind of unpleased with it. That's the word I'm looking for there, absolutely. But upon further rewatches, I kind of got a better and better idea of what it's going for. And so just in general, recommendation, rewatch Bong Joon Ho's movies. And that's not directed at Jackson. That's just a general recommendation of his movies are movies that very, very much reward rewatches, just because you get more and more richness from the text as you kind of start to understand little subtle nuances from it. And so the second time I watched it, Snowpiercer that is, I had a little bit of a more appreciation for the ending, in which I read it as far more metaphorical and allegorical in the way that the train is as a whole. Because yes, I think if you take it very literally, there is no doubt that the girl and the boy will die and be eaten by a polar bear outside of the train, and thus humanity will end. But from a metaphorical standpoint, it is far more a bucking of the shackles of capitalism and the machine that keeps us down to explore new, pure white, pure exploration type of thing going on there. And I am aggrandizing for comedic effect here. I think it's far more just this door has always been closed. Very literally within the movie, we do not open it because the only answer we see is the train, and the train represents capitalism. Let's blow it open and see what happens. Type of metaphor. And I think that from a metaphorical standpoint, that is a very hopeful thing. The idea of not so much that we have an alternative, or Bong-Joon Ho is presenting the alternative to capitalism, but more so that there are alternatives out there. And the fact that we are so blinded by the train that represents capitalism that we don't see the frozen door, the gate that there is a second gate at the front of the train that we can get out at, I think is just a very interesting way of reading the film. And as I said, if you were looking at it as a hopeful message of there are other options out there, do not have to be trapped in this machine that treats us as disposable cattle to be used to replace literally cogs in the machine, it is very hopeful in that way. But again, you take it and be like, hang on a second, let's look at this literally. It kind of falls apart a little bit. And also, I know Jackson has some political issues with the idea of stepping out from capitalism into nothingness that I don't disagree with, but I do think that there is an argument to be made of we can criticize something without having a solution for it, and even just presenting that, hey, we might not have a solution for it at this moment, but like we don't have to exist within this system that treats us like shit. Even if, like, Snowpiercer is not about coming up with the alternative to capitalism. It's about saying that there are alternatives out there. We just have to find them.
Sure, and I don't disagree that we can't, like, that a movie can't criticize a thing without, like, having a whole, like, Snowpiercer part 2 of where they build, like, anarcho-syndicalism or whatever. But, like, I guess that, like, because the literal element does, like, play into, like, what my political disagreement, shall we say, is, and that it's basically this, and that insofar as, while I agree in terms of art, in terms of, like, critique, in terms of commentary, that, like, you don't necessarily need, like, a plan to criticize something. If you're going to actually do the thing, if you're going to actually dismantle capitalism, you absolutely need a plan, because otherwise...
I will agree with him on that one. For what it's worth, like, I just want to say that don't just burn it down for the sake of burning it down. It's a bad idea.
yeah. And the thing is, I know there are plenty of people who would bristle at even that. And I guess, like, why I get like what makes me bristle with the ending is that, again, not that I necessarily need the, you know, the part 2 building of the perfect society or whatever. I mean, that'd probably be corny and boring as fuck. Like, I don't want to see
that. Sounds fucking awful.
Yeah. But for the purposes of the ending, like, the outside world that is presented is so bleak that it makes it hard for me to, like, feel emotionally like what that metaphor is, like, trying to say. Because, like, on its face, I don't disagree with the movie's, like, allegory of, like, you know, oh, we can't just, you know, take the train because that's like, you know, even if you have the right people in charge, there's still, like, all this you know, people getting stomped on in order to make the machine run. Like, you know, that's all well thought out. But, like, I guess that basically, I mean, it kind of goes like this, right? So let's say I'm going to use the most extreme example of, like, leftism that I don't want. I think we could all agree that Stalin was bad, and probably not even a leftist, right? And if you think that, you're a tanky, fuck off. We want you here about as much as we want the alt-righters. So Stalin was bad. What's not good is when you take a system that's bad, capitalism, and this is not actually what happened in Russian history. I'm way oversimplifying this, but to establish.
Hey, Jackson, no, we've got plenty of time here. Please take 20 hours here. And we can, this is actually going to be a small podcast within a podcast where we go through and discuss the fall of the USSR. I mean, is this pre-USSR Soviet Union? I don't know history. This is a bad podcast. Jackson, no, this is a bad podcast idea. I don't want to be a part of it anymore.
All right. Let's focus. So no history lesson from me. You can, there's plenty of other people who know more and can explain better, like what went down with the fucking czars and Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev and all that shit. So 100 years of history, complicated. Who would have thunk? But let's broadly say, we don't even have to use Stalin. Like, let's just say that, like, in a theoretical society, in a theoretical America, you have capitalism, you have what we have now. And we do it. There's the revolution. The means of productions have been seized. It's been burned all down. And what comes in its place? But I don't know, a Marxist-Leninist society with Charles Manson as the head. Like, let's just say that. Like, extreme example.
Oh, cool. So we brought him. Is he still alive?
I don't know if he is, actually, but, like, let's assume that Charles Manson is immortal in this frightening society.
No, I'm sorry. If we're getting all fucking off the rails here, I would like to assume that Charles Manson is a zombie, please and thank you.
Charles Manson is a lich.
There we go. Was that hard?
So, Lich Charles Manson is head comrade of our theoretical authoritarian left society. What we have not done, we may have indeed just demolished the injustices of capitalism, but while we were doing that, we went ahead and made something worse, and that is not what we want. And now, to be clear, this is not me. Like, I don't have much interest, and I know that's a common talking point amongst, like, conservatives, like, rah, like, Russia, Soviet Union, communism bad, like, whatever. Obviously, like, there are versions of socialism, communism that are not the fucking Soviet Union that, you could implement and could have, like, a better society. That's not what I'm saying here. But I am saying that if you're not careful about structuring that society, you could very well, like, run into another USSR or another, like, authoritarian China. Turns out that, lots of revolutions go poorly, and, like, strong men come in and sort of seize the opportunity to make everything worse. That's basically what Napoleon did after the French Revolution, right? So these are big, like, complicated, messy things. And I'm not saying that, like, we can't look to what's outside the system or, like, think about what's beyond. And if what was beyond was, like, there was some sort of, like, perverse beauty or, like, maybe some, like, hope for me to, like, more cling on to instead of, like, a void full of man-eating polar bears. Polar bears do actively hunt humans when they have the opportunity, by the way. That's a fun fact. But my problem is basically, like, so if we've escaped the train, we've escaped capitalism, is being in this snowy void, fending for ourselves, like skinning walrus every day at, like, 16, 17 years old, like, fighting for survival, is that actually better than being in the back of the train? And, you can argue that whichever way, but the fact that I even have to ask that question means that something is going wrong. And this is basically, like, where I extrapolate it to the political stuff too. And that, like, if you don't have that plan and you do just, burn it all down, and, like, we go back to, like, some hunter-gatherer, like, primitivist shit, then I'll keep my capitalism, thanks. Like, I enjoy, like, having movies and computers and technology and not having to, like, fight for warmth every single day of my life. And that's basically what my problem with the allegory is, that it feels like, even within the context of the story, that, like, the solution we have come to is just as bad, if not worse than the problem.
I disagree.
Nice meme.
Uncut Gems references aside, no, I mean, I really think that that's just the fundamental difference between Jackson and I here, in that I entirely and completely see Jackson's angle and perspective on how this would be read. I just, as I said, I'm reading it far more allegorically, rather than Jackson's taking a little bit more of a literal approach to it, which is something that I can completely and very easily see why you would end up taking that approach, because I mean, it is a very bleak element to it, but I think there's enough elements also within this scene of them out there with the polar bear that is coded hopefully, and like encouraging you to think about the hope of what may yet come and what may yet change. And so, while yes, I do think that ejecting from capitalism without any sort of backup plan is a bad idea, and yes, I do think that in the context of the movie, these kids are definitely going to die, and that is a tragedy. I do think that the allegory itself holds in a very hopeful way of we may yet find a way to eject from capitalism in a way that makes life better, and that there are options out there beyond blind capitalism for the sake of the machine. Live, die, repeat, I guess. And I think that's really what it boils down to for me, is I think that there's just a lot of hope in just finding an alternative, and part of that could just be that sometimes I just need some hope. And when we're living through the quarantine, which is both times that I've watched this movie recently thinking, oh my God, wouldn't it be nice if we had a government that supported us instead of the people at the front of the train? Maybe I am just looking for some hope in my media that says capitalism is bad. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I agree. I think that's fair. I am a deeply cynical man. I acknowledge this. But yeah, I think that, like, I don't know exactly. Again, I think that, like, in the Jackson Keller cut of Snowpiercer, it's identical to the cut that we have, except any shots of Yona and the kid being alive are removed, I think. And is that a depressing ending? From a humanist perspective, oh, absolutely. Humanity's fucking dead. You know, does it have sort of that, like, you know, like I said earlier, kind of Zen, like, you know, shooting stars, like becoming one with the cosmos and nature angle to it? I mean, I think it does. I think it could work. So
I do think that even in that line of thought, there is a bit of hope from just the polar bear out on the ice, where you see that life has gone on without us and we do not have the grand impact that we thought we would. And there is something beautiful to that, absolutely. So once again, the ending of our differences in this movie literally comes down to probably 200 frames, if that even. Yeah. No, it's actually ridiculous, like how I think it's actually interesting. Like, I was thinking about this and like how much, like, not that this is like some brilliant observation, I guess, but like a situation like this, like, really put into perspective, like how sometimes it is like something really small but really important that, like, you know, puts your, you know, that determines how you feel about a movie. And granted, like, whether or not like your main characters live is kind of a bigger thing, but like the way it's presented, like, it's just literal shots here. Like, that kind of fucked me up thinking about it. Like, damn, like, you know, you could literally like remove like 2 seconds of this movie and I would have a completely different opinion on the ending. Like, shit. I mean, cutting back to Uncut Gems last week, there is literally, if you listen to that episode, I'm not going to spoil anything for you here, don't worry about it, but there is literally like a line thrown out just almost haphazardly in the middle of the movie that is a blink and you'll miss it line that completely restructured my entire view of the movie. I was going to love the movie either way, but it allowed me to formulate this entire broad, I would argue, interesting thesis about the film that if it wasn't there, if I had missed it, or even just if it had hit differently, I never would have arrived at that point. I mean, it's just small things, and the endings are definitely going to have a bigger impact just due to the, you know, recency effect of psychology, but small details in movies are very much a make or break across the board. And I think especially when it comes to Jackson and I, as we are very very close in film tastes, but like we have that 1% difference, I would say, that like just sometimes you get that right movie that hits and that 1% difference there, and one of us has a wildly different opinion than the other. And that I think is beautiful for the podcast.
I think so too. And like it's so funny because this is coming like a month, I think, after we did Paranorman, which was like a very similar conversation.
Yeah,
over a very similar like amount of frame.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I like having these conversations. It has kind of become funny that like when these are movies, the problem is that we keep doing movies that I really, really like. And so parting the kimono, we get into our pre-discussion. We kind of shoot the shit for like half an hour, just kind of like warm up to each other's vibes for that day, you know, kind of feel where we're both at. And then there comes a time where I have to be like, so what'd you think of the movie? And like, I am braced because after Paranorman, which is one of my favorite movies, I love Paranorman. When he came in, like, it was great, but I hated this 1 second. I've been like, so what'd you think of Snowpiercer? Oh God, please don't. So it's been funny in that regard. I mean, it's been great because we actually have some very interesting conversations, and I really, again, do enjoy talking with you about these things. Don't misunderstand, audience. This is a great conversation. But it is very funny that, like, because we've just been watching things that I've seen before and love and have opinions on, I'm a far more tepidly concerned that Jackson's going to say something bad about it. Two, you know what? Let me put myself on blast here for a moment to something relevant to the day today. We're recording this on the day that Ready Player 2 comes out. And just to show...
Oh, I'm so glad I think I know what you're about to say, and I'm so glad.
Just to show how time has passed and things have changed. The conversations that we have nowadays are like, did you like this movie? And if Jackson goes like, yeah or no, and it's a movie that I like, it doesn't personally wound me, and I can have a conversation with him about it. And like sometimes I'll be a little bit bummed, like, oh man, you know, I was hoping to just have kind of like a fun, uplifting conversation about this movie, but I guess we're gonna have like a serious conversation about it, which is kind of a bummer. But like, I don't let it. When Jackson was talking about Ready Player One, the book, with his friend, he said that the book sucked. And I would like to go on record as saying that the book probably does suck a lot. The movie absolutely did, but I have not read the book since 2011. And longtime fans of the podcast will know that I proudly, and not so proudly, announced that I was the worst person when it comes to media literacy up until like 2017, and have gotten better since then. But because of that, I now am aware that Ready Player One probably sucks. I will never reread it because I actually liked it the first time I read it. I have fond memories of it, and I would like to keep that. And I don't want to just kick myself in the dick for multiple hours reading Ready Player One and realizing how trash it is. That is to say, though, that as Jackson was shit-talking the book, I was in the room, got kind of upset, went, "No, you're wrong," and walked out of the room all in a huff. And I am embarrassed about that to this day.
Well, hey, I'll stick up for you here because you actually got a really good dig in on me. I remember this very well because it was actually funny as fuck. Was when your response was basically, as part of being mad, part of your response was, you are the same man that like asked the house one time if Shrek came out before or after 9/11 because you were going to make a reference in a story set in 2001. It was a pretty good dig. He had a good point there. You know, I'll drag myself down to your level, Sean. Don't worry, we're both demons.
Oh God, college kids, man, they're the fucking worst. We're so goddamn stupid when we're in college. Jesus Christ.
So that's no, and you know, I think part of it is also just that, like, I've been thinking about this. I think a little bit. I've got a bit of that, like when it comes to media, Like, I've been enough of a fucking disgusting like internet troll lurker for long enough. I've developed like a Saiyan instinct to like try and get in arguments about it. So like I remember that like when we talked about my two favorite movies, Inception and The Dark Knight, like you came with some pretty hefty criticisms for both those movies, and I was like, yes, like let's go. I'm I'm getting excited for this brawl. So I think I might just be more of a sociopath.
I mean, that's possible. It is entirely fair that I like having healthy discussions, but I also like the idea of going into a podcast to like argue for an hour just fills me with dread. Jesus Christ. Like, I like the conversations that we have because a lot of times they're not really arguing unless you're talking about Serenity, but that's a totally different story.
That's a totally like dipshit meme argument that doesn't matter at all.
But like for the most part, like they're just very like well-balanced conversations of acknowledgement of like, yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. This is like where our opinion's different. It doesn't really feel like an argument. But like there are just like, oh my God, yeah, no, when I would hate to be a podcast where we just argue for an hour and just yell at each other, and that sounds miserable. Unless it's about whether Matthew McConaughey is Chappie, whereas I will argue with you about that for the rest of my life. I don't remember either of our positions on it anymore, and it doesn't fucking matter.
I remember I was pro Chappie. Matthew McConaughey was Chappie in my mind.
Wait, did anybody just clip that? Because Jackson just said he is pro Chappie. We just need to make sure that is clear. He is on record. Anyway, before we wrap up here, if you don't mind, I just want to talk very briefly about two things that I noticed in this movie that I thought was really, really clever this time around.
Yeah, go for it.
So just a small little detail that I never really picked up on before now. And, I think that the political climate probably has something to do with it. But I really like that.
I just want to say, movie was way fucking ahead of its time.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like genuine leftist discourse was not what it is now. So, yeah, continue.
But when they're in the front of the car and the cops are chasing after them, I really, really like that the people in the front of the car just don't react to the police because they're not going to do anything. They work for us. And that's great. That is just a great little subtle detail of, class superiority and fuck the rich.
That is great. That actually reminds me of a point that I wanted to say in the movie's favor. So I'm going to end on a positive note, and that like part of the movie, I think undoubtedly is kind of the ugliness and messiness of like violent revolutions. But I think what's really great is that it manages to make that point in a way that's not like cringeworthy or over the top or like eye roll inducing. It's not like, oh, we're going to go to the front of the cars and kill like every single person in the front of the cars. Aren't we like herbiteur? Like, I mean, obviously this movie is not interested in saying that like, the revolutionaries are just as bad as the people oppressing them. And that's an important distinction. But yeah, like, I think
sides bad?
Ooh, there are good and bad people on both sides. I'm Donald Trump, the worst fucking president of all time. Anyway, and so I think that because that would have been, even if you weren't making the point of both sides bad, like that would have been a really easy thing to go for. To even have them just like take out one annoying rich person who like, doesn't really aggress on them, and then have like him get scolded at by Gilliam or whatever. Like that would have been really easy. But Bong-Joon Ho is smarter than that.
And the only person who takes out rich people are the police.
Damn.
It's almost like there's something there. Like if you spelled out some letter, hang on, I'm gonna give a random letter generator. Okay, so this doesn't mean anything, but if I rolled four letters, A, C, A, B, I don't know what that means. I guess I'll leave it up to interpretation.
Oh, I wonder, such a curious, string of letters. I wonder if there's any possible meaning behind them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. The other thing I just wanted to mention too, and I don't know, I'm kind of curious on your interpretation of what I'm about to bring to the table here because I've been thinking about it for a while. is the fight in the train car with all the hooded people, and like what that theoretically could represent. And I kind of came away with something interesting that could entirely be me talking out my ass here, but fuck it, I'm gonna present it anyway. Because if you have a class commentary, you have the upper class, you have the lower class. Where's the middle class? And I kind of realized that, hey, this group of hooded people that tend to be like the biggest mass of people we really see outside of the lower class could very easily stand in for the middle class, especially as they are all like covering their eyes, almost as if they are, blind to the aggressions of the upper class and blind to the plight of the lower class, and just willing to fight for their gods. I don't know if that's actually what it's going for, but I thought that's an interesting interpretation.
No, I think it is. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's the other thing I wanted to praise. Actually, I'm glad you brought this up because I was trying to remember what I wanted to also compliment the movie on. So another difference between Bong-Joon Ho, a smart man making smart movies, and Neil Blomkamp, creator of Chappie, is that so in Elysium, the reason that the allegory is so like dumb fuck stupid. It isn't that like they're doing some over the top like sci-fi thing, because this is kind of an over the top sci-fi thing. It's not a matter of it being over the top. It's that it's so simple. In Elysium, there is a floating city above everyone else, and there is everyone else on the planet. And like, that's it. It's like one way or the other. And like, what if, all the rich people like live in the city, like, aren't we clever? No. Fucking simplistic and fucking stupid. But the thing about the train, with like the train cars, each like level is that like, you can go through and like, seeing that there's like, the people living under the most oppression in like the tail end, but there's clearly some sort of like working class, right? Like, like the people tending to the fruits and stuff, and like the sushi guy, the sushi chef probably lives a little bit of a better life, but like probably not as good as like the people, having a rave in the very front. And like, so with that regard, like there's a lot of layers and stratification and a lot of individual commentary on society. And I think that's a pretty on point reading for the creepy, like Assassin's Creed hooded guys. And there's actual nuance and actual depth. It's not just saying, what if rich people here and everyone else here? It's actually trying to like make meaningful commentary on reality and social stratification. Wow, what a concept. I can't believe the creator of Chappie didn't grasp the finer subtleties of these things.
Especially because it actually feels like a continuum as opposed to two separate worlds, which like it is a continuum that is gated absolutely in the way of capitalism and social climbing and whatnot, but it is not literally, look at the elite, they're in space.
I mean, even that comment, like, this is a line that I really like. That comment from, like, Wilford, the dude at the absolute top, is like, hey, you're the only person to have walked the entire train. Even I've never done that. And there's a lot to that line that I really like. That's really good.
Also, just the fact that Wilford's like, my position sucks too. It's loud sometimes and lonely. Like, is just... Mwah, absolute chef's fucking kiss, Jesus Christ. Final note, just a final note, because this has stuck with me forever. The arm shattering scene is so great and so grody.
Yeah, that's the grody-ness I want to see in my films.
Yeah, I fucking love the arm shattering scene. It is so hard to watch, and it is so good for it. But yeah, I think that's all I got. You got anything left?
I'm going out on a positive note. I've said my praises. I've aired out my critiques. I've gotten, Stalinists mad at me. It's been a good day.
Watch Snowpiercer. Watch Bong-Joon Ho movies. They're great.
I'm definitely going to be watching more Bong-Joon Ho movies, and I'm going to, even if Sean was calling me out for only having seen them once, it'd be a worthy call out because they're great films.
I genuinely, highly, if you have already watched Snowpiercer, if you have already watched Parasite, I highly, highly, highly recommend re-watching them. Bong-Joon Ho is a masterclass filmmaker and knows how to hide nuance in re-watches. Please, for the love of God, re-watch them. But for now, I'm Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. I'm mostly just tweeting weird stuff and like trying to interact with people right now. So please come say hi, talk to me about things, and tell me why my interpretations and theories might be wrong in some capacity.
And I've been Jackson Keller. You can find me on Twitter at Jackson J. Keller. I was about to say that I mostly just go there to waste time when I'm procrastinating, but like I was tweeting a lot of stupid shit today and got like a lot of writing done. I had a very productive day.
If you can strike the right balance, Twitter's a great way to blow off some steam and like keep the train moving. But like it's tricky because you kind of have to like skip off of it and like just kind of keep the momentum going, because if you don't skip, you just fucking sink, and it's a horrible thing to do. But speaking of Twitter, follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. We mostly tweet about like updates, things that are coming out ahead. If there's a bonus episode coming out, which there should be soon. And if you want to hear that bonus episode, or if you want to yell at Jackson and I directly, join our Discord at patreon.com/BADHcast. Only $1 a month gets you extra to our Discord. $5 a month gets you extra to our Discord, as well as our backlog of bonus episodes. And $10 a month gets you access to our backlog of bonus episodes, our Discord, as well as the ability to request bonus episodes. We're still accepting recommendations. So if you got something you want us to talk about, please let us know. Also, it gets you a little something.
Thank you so much, Julia, Travis, Pat, Mom, Aunt Summer. Y'all are great. Y'all are the front car people of our audience.
I don't like that.
You're right, because we're the front car people. We're the ones keeping this train running.
You guys can be our like execution squad. That'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, the execution squad is are all the patrons who aren't stallion tier. The stallions are the people doing like the ragers and stuff right behind.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm on board with this metaphor. Absolutely. And all the people who just like listen to the episode. You're the fucking tailies. Get back there. We're gonna shatter some arms. All the thanks to the Lords of the High with the use of our theme song. It is Suicide. Also to take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band. You should go check them out wherever you can. They're on Bandcamp now. They're also streaming. Go stream their music, buy their music, whatever you gotta do. Support artists however you can. They are struggling right now. Please support theaters, musicians, actors, actresses, everyone. Support them. They need it. Also, thanks to our 5yearslaterslate.com. There's a little button of us in the corner. You can go click on it and take you to us. But you should also go check out the people over there. There's a bunch of really talented people doing a bunch of really talented writing that you should absolutely, definitely go read. Next week, as I said, we're doing Undertale. It's going to be interesting. It's probably going to be a longer episode. Who knows?
Hopefully, we're not going to have a bad time.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go.